Hi Karthikeya, hi Nikunj. Welcome to the YouTube live.
Hey, hi Kashish.
Hi Kashish.
Hi, how are you doing?
All good, Kashish?
What about you, Karthikeya? How are you doing?
All well, Kashish. I think it's a beautiful morning in Mumbai, so I think it's quite better than where Nikunj is right now. He is in
No, lovely
cold
weather
Delhi
here
only.
in NCR as well, I believe. Right, Nikunj?
Absolutely.
So we'll wait for another 2 to 3 minutes wherein our audience can join, and probably we will start with our live session if that works.
Sure.
Great. I think let's start. For everyone who has joined us on YouTube and for everyone who is watching us, a very quick introduction. So, I am Kashish. I'll be moderating this session, and we are having this session on data privacy in relation to public sector. And since we are approaching the Data Protection Day, I believe all of us are pretty aware of why data protection is important and is the talk of the town. So we have our experts, we have Nikunj and Karthikeya to support us, to make us aware of different things related to data privacy. And if we have any questions, even from the audience's end, we'll be more than happy to answer that towards the end of the session. And we'll keep this more interactive. And a quick introduction for Karthikeya and Nikunj from my end. And please feel free to add something if you would want to. So we have Nikunj, who is leading the consulting sector. He is a partner in consulting as a service line, and he's leading the public and the social sector for us. And we have Karthikeya. Karthikeya is basically looking into data privacy and cybersecurity, and he's an associate partner in consulting with Mazars in India. So, a quick hi again to both of you, and a quick hi to all the audiences who have joined us. We will have a lot of audience joining us in between. So, we will start with the conversation. If you have something to add, please go forward.
I think you covered it all, Kashish. We are here very, very excited to present the point of view of how privacy and public sector has an interplay.
Definitely. Equally excited to have you guys here. And so I would start with me not associated with this particular technical background. I wouldn't definitely know the entire intricacies or technicalities of data privacy in public sector or data privacy in general. So for me, it is very important to understand that I understand public sector uses a lot of data to improve their services, and this extensive data collection always raises some sort of concern with respect to privacy, with respect to potential misuse of this data. So how do you think that government can balance these needs, as in how can they still collect the information, can still have the data in place, but not have this particular concern of privacy and the potential misuse of data that it always comes with? So Nikunj, let's start with
So,
you.
sure. Thanks, Kashish. I understand and your concern, regarding the data from a government perspective, that's quite valid. And as per my understanding, there is a vast amount of data which is being collected by the public sector and which is being used for various purposes, be it in terms of the tax collection, be it in, from a healthcare perspective, then could be for making some allowance payment and for traffic monitoring, which typically raises concerns about the privacy. And and there is a possibility of a potential misuse. So government really needs to find a mechanism or really need to strike a balance between utilizing data, right, for improved services and also at the same time ensure that how do we really protect the individual privacy. So they are, of course, this of course can be achieved through various means. So my colleague, Karthik, would rather be in a position to answer you, better. So Karthik.
I think that very valid and very pertinent question, Kashish, from your side, especially a citizen who is taking a lot of government services. We all feel that why is it that government is taking so much of our data? Although we understand there is a subsidy, there is a benefit attached to it. So to start off with, what we understand is it is important for the government in order to identify that the right person is getting that kind of subsidy or that kind of license. So it is more of an authentication mechanism. That's where the first initial step that the government took was the Aadhaar Act, and we saw the Aadhaar was used as an identity, and it was a very important step that the government took, especially considering the Digital India push that the government was giving at that time. So said that there are various mechanisms in which government actually has achieved this very important balance between what kind of data and how much of that data they are trying to collect. So they start off with putting strong protection laws and regulations. You see Aadhaar Act, you see the kind of stringent mechanisms that they have put in, the kind of penalties that they have enforced. It's very difficult for anybody who has misused Aadhaar data to get away easily. And then we have the DPDPA. In DPDPA also you see that there is the kind of penalties which are going up to like a 250 crore for any data breach. So government is quite serious when it comes to getting the data protection laws and regulations. So we feel very confident in handing over our personal data to government. Said that, there are a lot of discussion around transparency, accountability, which we see that there is a like lot of clarity now coming in from why that particular data is being getting put in, and I would say is being used by the government. The accountability is very direct. There is a grievance redressal system that most of these schemes have. There's a lot of cyber security initiatives that government has taken in certain, and other agencies are involved in ensuring that the data that has been collected by the government is protected from unauthorized access, from breaches. Also, there is an independent oversight. We see a lot of regulatory bodies, sectoral regulators especially, who have come up and making sure that various sectors, whether it is health or it is banking, financial, or if it is insurance, very strong regulators we see in these sectors who are also helping and guiding, making sure that our data is safe and respected. Sorry, Kashish, I think you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. So yeah, I was mentioning that with the first question being answered, I believe I feel more concerned about my data as well as more protected towards my data from the government's perspective. And continuing the same, I believe you mentioned Aadhaar as one of the major activity wherein a lot of data, as in a lot of different sort of information, be it personal or general information, was collected by the public sector, by the government, and they were used and misused as well by a lot of parties. So except of this particular initiative, Nikunj, do you mind listing some of the activities or maybe an everyday interaction wherein the public sector is collecting the data, they are contributing to their own database, and how this benefits the citizens? I would want to understand how maybe I or any other citizen living in this particular country is getting benefits from this particular data collection method, or the entire database that the government is maintaining.
Karthik, would you like to take this up? Or we, of course.
Yeah, definitely. We can start off by there are various areas where we see the data is being collected. So there can be taxes. Recently, we filed our taxes around with the official documents. So there's a lot of data which is being collected in public sector, and these are numerous daily transactions that we are happening. But we are also seeing a very huge amount of data being processed, I would say, in the social media platforms these days. We see that there is public engagement being there, the communication is there. A lot of people are posting information and collecting information via websites, online forms, applications. There are a lot of these mobile apps that have been used, and a lot of these mobile apps which are being downloaded on our mobile phones are collecting data. And these are government apps, mind you. So we have public Wi-Fi networks which are spread across cities. We knew that in the 100 smart city project itself, there were two main pillars of those smart cities, and Nikhil can give us more details. That was the public Wi-Fi as well as the surveillance cameras that were extensively used in these smart city infrastructure. So there is this particular digital financial transaction that is also being carried out, and we also see that there is data for various other purposes being collected. So not only for the benefits and subsidy, but also for analytics, for monitoring traffic flow, managing public health situations like what we saw in COVID-19 pandemic. We also see that there is a lot of predicting and preventing crime that is happening.
Okay, Nikunj, anything that you would want to add?
Karthik already covered, all the, the platforms where the data is being collected by the government. So this encompasses, this gives a overall, view of how the data is being collected, how, the government is acting on it. So I think that's fine.
So, since Kartike mentioned social media and being a Gen Z, it would be very unfair of me if I don't include that in the conversation that I'm having with two different experts. So, Kartike, as all of us, maybe whenever we are making one account on social media, we have been putting in our information, as in all the personal details, starting from our name to date of birth to all the different type of interests we have. So, how do you think that the government laws are protecting our data, and how do you think that DPDPA, now that has become a part of the bigger picture, is it better than the different acts that were prevalent in this particular setup, or how do you think that this is making my particular data on social media or on any other public platform more secured and safe?
Definitely. So I think at Gen Z, one thing which we saw in DPDPA was very clearly mentioning that there is a responsibility as digital nagriks that we all have. And one of the reasons was that we are seeing that a lot of public disclosure that is happening in the media. So what we are seeing is that we create a profile, we make all our information public. Now we must understand that with DPDPA, any information which has been voluntarily made public is not covered under DPDPA. So that is one important step that we must undertake, that when we are putting our details on any of the social media platforms as digital nagriks, we need to make sure that we are using the privacy settings which are there and not making all the data public. Said that, the safeguards and the guardrails which have been provided by the Act are very clear. The purpose for which it has been put, if that is there is scraping of data and there is reusing of it without us giving the explicit consent, will be treated as a non-compliance with DPDPA, attracting a penalty which may go up to 250 crore. So that is a big deterrent for the companies, as well as when it comes to public sector PSUs or even the government departments. They themselves are undertaking a journey to get into compliance with DPDPA.
So, speaking of citizen consent, as you mentioned, what can be some potential benefits or maybe risk that we can discuss that is associated with the new act coming into the picture?
Perfect. So there are areas where I think DPDPA consent undoubtedly empowers individuals and strengthens privacy. The shift empowers individuals to participate actively in digital economy and safeguard their autonomy in the online world. Also, obtaining an individual's consent for every data use instance can be a very cumbersome and delays the processing of activity or processing of that particular data. So it is potentially impacting the efficiency of the public service delivery also. So the government right now is striking a balance between the robust privacy protection and the efficient data utilization, which is very, very important vis-a-vis the successful implementation of any regulation around data privacy and protection. Because on one hand, you see that a lot of us want to go and have a very seamless transaction vis-a-vis even the government services. For example, when you step into airports, you have Digi Yatra. Now, Digi Yatra, our facial recognition or facial scanning is happening, our biometrics are being taken. And there's a beautiful, seamless platform where we can actually enter and exit an airport without much issue, right? Now, with that, we must be aware of what is the kind of data privacy or restrictions that are there when it comes to processing of that information, because we are giving our consent, which is explicit every time we are giving a new boarding pass, we are giving that consent. Every time we are utilizing that app, we are giving consent. So what is important is that government is now very, very cautious when it is approaching any of these schemes, so that they can actually make sure that it is in compliance with the privacy law and the privacy rules. So we must understand DPDP is not stopping you from using various technologies vis-a-vis the kind of safeguards it is asking you to put. So it is not stopping the business, whereas it is enabling it with more security, more privacy, and the citizen feeling more secure when it is sharing that information, that it will not be misused.
Definitely, Karthik. I believe I agree with you mentioning the Digi Yatra. And since I was traveling recently in the breaks that we got in December, I found this very hassle free. I mean, I just entered the airport and it wasn't like a huge process of like 30 minutes, 40 minutes that usually used to take place. And I didn't have to stand in those long queues, which was such a boost. I was like, wow, this is how, if I'm traveling, I will make sure that I'm traveling more often in the coming year. So definitely, this is one of the best things that the government has done. And talking about the government, I believe DPDPA is a very technical act for me. If I am not from the background, if I would read about it, I might not be able to understand like 100% of it. So you have broke it down for anybody of us who doesn't know this particular act or who is not really aware of the technical jargons. So thank you for doing that, and I believe I am more data conscious from now on. And before marking everything as yes to take all of my information and use it however the apps want it, I'll be more conscious and I'll make sure that I'm reading the entire terms and conditions before doing that. So it's not the government who has to be blamed every time, it is not the third party who has to be blamed every time. And I believe us as a human or as a citizen should take this particular onus or responsibility and become the digital Nagrik that you would want us to become. So, yeah, from government perspective, Nikunj, what are some key government steps and actions? Again, for us, if you could break it down, the key government steps and actions that this particular act has made us aware of from individual data perspective, as in, I would want to understand how my individual data is processed in this particular act and how the government are taking some key steps and actions to protect.
Very pertinent. In fact, looking at the act basically emphasizes on the individual consent. And when I talk of individual consent, it's basically acting as a cornerstone, mandating explicit approval between the data access and, of course, the data processing. Now, data owners on one side can grant and revoke consent, and of course have ultimate control over their data, which can of course be used or processed for lawful purposes. At the same time, just to add on to it, the government is also in the processing, is actually in the process of establishing a data protection board to enforce compliance. So these are some of the steps which the government is taking proactively from a DPDPA perspective.
Just
So,
to add to
Nikunj, I believe, yeah, sure.
Yeah, just to add to what Nikunj was saying, so I feel that the government is definitely with this law has come up with very specific actions and steps. Said that one important caveat over here is that the act doesn't stop government from taking data for any purpose or mean where you are getting some benefit. For example, if you want to get a license or maybe you want to get a certificate or something from the government, you need to give that data, and it has been voluntarily being given by you to in order to get that license or get that particular service from the government. So that itself has been properly documented within the act, and that processing activity has been kept, because you cannot get that service without providing the data, and that kind of authentication, etc., whatever the processing activity steps are, the government department or ministry needs to do. And in order to do that, there is a particular section within DPDPA which actually caters to this, and it has been very well documented there.
Definitely, I agree. And since we have talked about the key government policies or the tips that they have inculcated in this particular act, and they are making sure that our data is protected and not misused at all. And I would want to understand, since we have been talking about consent a lot, and consent is one word that is almost synonymous to data privacy and protection. So, why do you think in India's landscape specifically, as mentioned by DPDPA as well, why do you think consent managers have become increasingly important? Why do you think there is a crucial role that they have to play in the entire evolving landscape of data protection and management?
Uh, can I answer, Karthik?
Yes.
So basically, the DPDP, it emphasizes the individual control over the personal data. Now again, which makes this as a cornerstone for ethical data processing. Now, consent managers empower the individuals to control their data. That's what I believe. And Karthik, maybe you can add few points, because I've also been seeing the India's data privacy landscape, and which of course has which basically talks of a meaningful control over the personal data, and this data becomes more crucial than ever, which basically helps in solidifying the critical role of the consent managers in establishing a robust, plus of course a transparent data protection framework. So that's what I believe, from why consent managers are really important in day-to-day activity.
Yeah. Just to add to what Nikunj is saying, so there is this particular area of consent manager where we see consent manager as a data fiduciary when it comes to this particular act. And data fiduciary is any organization which actually would be like a company. So when we talk about consent manager as a company, we understand in the overall ecosystem that consent managers would be the companies which will manage consent on behalf of data principals, and all the other data fiduciary or significant data fiduciaries will be getting their consent from this consent manager. In order to draw a parallel, if people from BFSI already know, there is a concept of account aggregator. So account aggregator is a concept where you are actually getting this financial details and information from a third party who has been given the consent by the data principal, or in this case the user, to share that account related information to the BFSI in order to get loan or processing done vis-a-vis their applications for that particular financial service. Now, if you take this on a very large scale, so this is not limited to financial information. Now, this will be limited to data privacy. So, it will be related to personal data, but it will cut across all sectors. So, not only the financial, but health, insurance. There are so many other sectors which are media, there is gaming. So there are a lot of sectors which will now have consent managers as where this particular law enables them to act on behalf of data principals. And what data principals get is that there is one particular this dashboard where they can go and see which all consents they have given, where they can withdraw consent, whether the withdrawal consent has been processed properly by the data fiduciary, etc. So this is the kind of ecosystem that we see getting developed when it comes to the new law, the DPDPA law.
So, as much as I'm excited to witness this ecosystem coming into place, wherein I can see, or maybe somebody who has given some sort of consent can see what kind of consents and that they have given, of course, and have shared, and what kind of platforms or positions these particular data is being used, and they can take that onus of maybe dictating that this is where my data can be used and this is where I don't agree or I don't allow my data to be used. This, I think, will be a game changer, and with this coming into the system, I believe the government has already aced one step ahead of where we were with the entire data protection concept earlier. But do you think DPDPA would be enough to protect this particular data, or do you think there should be some sort of future steps or some new laws that will come up in the future that we can expect as citizens that would help much more and much better in maybe enhancing DPDPA, or maybe going one step ahead of it, beyond the entire thinking can be beyond what DPDPA is all about? How do you think the government's future steps would look like in this particular domain?
Yeah. So I think, Kashish, you are bang on target. Government is definitely thinking, and for the first time, we see that government is thinking on the steps beyond as to what the law enables, entails. And the reason is that the government is thinking about the new emerging technology which it is seeing around, and the kind of impact that might have on privacy. So the government aims to address data transfers outside India, potentially developing some kind of a data transfer protection schemes. We see that Honorable Minister and a lot of other executives and officers from the government are already speaking on public forums around this. We also see that implementation of a generally accepted privacy framework might be something that the industry would like to have with all the best practices. And especially when it comes to startups and SMMEs, MSMEs, we see that there is a push that the government wants to give them some toolkits where they can easily get in compliance with the DPDPA Act. We see that the government is also in consideration of various schemes that they are going to launch in future, how that will impact the privacy of individuals, and what are the safeguards that they need to put for. First time we see that there are technology solutions being discussed within the government, and the robust data protection measures that the government wants to take, whether it is public education or sanitation or smart cities and other such major schemes, Manerga, etc., where we see that huge amount of personal data is being collected by the government and being processed. They also want to empower individuals in becoming data managers, where as individuals we behave in a certain fashion where we are also protecting our privacy. So the onus, as you very well said earlier, that it is shared between the government and the citizens, and that is also a very key aspect. So I feel that the government is doing its bit. We see that for the first time that government is coming up with Digital India Act as one of the initiatives, which will be an umbrella act. AI is being discussed. AI policy is being discussed. And we see that the government is talking about deepfakes and other such ransomware, etc. So government is, for the first time, we see that it is thinking even beyond all of this into drone technology, impact of that on privacy, etc. So we are seeing that the government is headed at the right direction. They are creating that skeletal system as of now as we speak. But as rules come out, as various other laws come out this year, we will see a very robust framework being implemented by the government.
Nikunj, would you want to add something to this as well?
So I think Karthik has covered the points, of course, from a government perspective. So
So, as much as we have talked about government coming up with different types of acts and laws to protect us as citizen, and with the entire robust framework coming into the picture, definitely the government has moved a step ahead. But I just wanted to understand from a common man's perspective, do you think that there is some lack of awareness around DPDPA still? And how are we planning to address that? As in, how the government is planning to address that? And since we do not have any active privacy board as of now, how do you think the Ministry of Electronics and IT are sorting that issue out, or how do you think that they are addressing this particular issue of awareness and the absence of active privacy board?
see, in the absence of course, the in the absence of a fully constituted data privacy board, as which is being envisaged under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology is currently playing multifaceted role. And when I talk of multifaceted role, they are trying to implement and bring about awareness around the act. Now, since they have been doing so, they have been carrying out multiple functions from a DPDPA perspective. One, of course, happens to be the focus on drafting the rules, the regulations, which is rather in the final stages of the rules being drafted, and this is being mandated by Section 40 of DPDPA 2023. Second, once this is published for consultation, these rules will rather bring about a change, bring about some kind of guidance for understanding and complying, of course, with the act. Now, this would rather help the industry experts. This will also help the other stakeholders. Second, in terms of what you said about how the awareness has to be addressed from a DPDPA perspective. Recently, there was an expression of interest which was floated by Ministry of Electronics and IT, which was basically to create a nationwide awareness to promote the understanding and compliances with the DPDPA. And of course, the aim being to foster a culture of data privacy and security. And of course, the scope, from an awareness perspective, included the public outreach initiative, which was basically to bring awareness among the students, the citizens, the businesses, the various government agencies by organizing workshops, webinars, seminars, and awareness campaigns. Second is it's about creating an engaging and informative content. It's about developing material, blogs, posts, and guides through a clear understanding on the user friendly languages. And as per the schedule 8 of the Indian Constitution, the articles and the blogs are required to be circulated in 22 regional languages. The third is, of course, the how do I make this content effective from a delivery perspective? How do I make this content interactive from a delivery perspective? This can only be done through collaborative workshops, self-learning materials, tutorials, nukkad natak, quizzes, standby comedy, or it could be you can also think of adopting Ragini, as one of the means of delivering content in an interactive way.
Definitely, Nikunj. I believe everything that you mentioned, and being from a department of brand marketing and communications, I would 100% agree that communication and the right form of communication, if it strikes with your audience, definitely it is going to make a huge impact. And anything that even we do, we try to make it as relevant and as simple as possible. Nobody wants to read technical jargons. Nobody wants to read very heavy technical content these days. Let's be very honest. We want to make it as simple for them, as snackable for them as possible. So definitely, with the government coming up with these particular initiatives, translating this particular act in different regional languages, I believe that will be something that even a person like me, maybe if I do not understand English 100%, and if I am somebody who just understands Telugu, so that would be such a game changer for me, because I don't have to read something and then get it translated by someone else, and there wouldn't be any form of perspective that will change with the entire translation process. That will be such a seamless process if I get the entire act broken down into as simple language as possible in my own regional language, and it will be so easier for me to understand that. And I believe nobody other than me again, after this particular act comes into the picture, nobody will say that I do not understand the technical language. Hence, Karthika and Nikunj, do you mind explaining that to me? So I know that I come to both of you guys and other partners as well, and asking these particular technical terms as in what is this. And as I was talking about consent manager, I couldn't understand the entire increased the applicability or maybe the need of having consent managers. But now that we have spoken about it, definitely everybody who's watching us, including me, would be much more aware about, much more conscious about our data than we were before this live session. And with all of these acts and laws that we have talked about, just as a curious citizen, I would want to understand, when is it coming into the picture? Will that be before January 2024? And if no, when should we expect it? Because now that you have raised the entire excitement level of the audience and me specifically, I would want to read this particular thing. I would want to understand this and then come to both of you guys again to understand if I couldn't. So, when is it coming into the picture? When will these rules come out for us to understand and implement, of course?
Yeah, so I think the answer is right now, if you say that it will come out in January, the answer is no, because the act is out. The act is already in place. It is already a law, right? So, but the rules is something that gives more clarity and also will touch some of the areas of the nuances of the data privacy board. If there is anything around DPIA, if it is around consent and notices, etc. So all of those are already made by the ministry. As we all know that we are heading to our 26th of January Republic Day celebrations, and after that we have the whole week which will go into the budget. And post budget, we are also anticipating very soon that our general Lok Sabha elections will be announced. And as Nikunj already told me, that as soon as, coming from the public sector, of course, that as soon as the elections get announced by EC, there is a model code of conduct. The code of conduct gets set in. There's nothing new that the government can release from that day onwards till the time the election results are out and the new government is formed. So as soon as the new government comes into action, I think that is the time when we will see a lot of these rules, which are already made by the ministry, would be under the public consultation rounds, and we will see that those rules would be coming out post that. This is our anticipation, but we know that the government is being run on steroids. It can happen even in a day or so. So you never know. Fingers crossed. We want it to be there before the budget, but said that there are certain intricacies and nuances that are there in the government. So giving them all due respect and the kind of work that they have already done, ample space and time, so that a good set of rules are out, which are um, the shining light and guide us through the journey of our privacy implementation.
Definitely, I agree with the government taking these particular steps. Implementation would be something that we all would look forward to. Of course, we would play our parts in it, but it's the government who has to play the major part. And us as digital nagriks, of course, will play our particular parts in it as well. And once this is in place, definitely all of us would be much more data protect and much more data aware than what we are today. So, with that being said, we have a lot of audiences as well, and we have questions coming up from them. So, if that's okay, I will just ask their questions to you as well, because I believe, as excited as I am, they are equally excited to have these particular two leaders, rather experts, I would like to say, to answer their questions and to address their concerns as well. Because, yeah, who better than both of you guys to understand data protection and privacy from public and social sector than. So we have a question from Kanishka, and that reads like, what resources and infrastructure be provided to public sector entities to comply with the Act's data security and privacy requirements? So she wants to understand that what resources and infrastructure will the government or the public sector would need to have this particular act comply to all of these requirements that we have. So anybody of you, if you would want to answer her and maybe address the query.
So I'll start and then let Nikunj to finish. So there is ample resources and ample amount of money that will go into the not only the awareness but the frameworks, but also the implementation and how various ministries and departments will get into compliance with DPDPA, and ensuring that the privacy of citizens and the kind of data that is being collected and used is being respected, as well as making sure that we are protected as digital nagriks. Nikunj.
Nikunj,
Yeah, I
I believe
think
you're on mute.
My apologies. I think Karthik, quite a comprehensive view, and we should rather wait for the rules and of course the framework compliance to be out, or let's have those moments stored as of now. So let's wait for the how the government actually reacts and comes out, of course, with the data protection framework and the compliances, plus of course the rules.
Definitely, these are some sort of resources and infrastructure that you mentioned that the government or the public sector would definitely need from the entire compliance, or maybe, as I was mentioning, the implementation would play a huge part in it. And let's all see how this particular thing gets implemented and how we are all using it to the T, and how we make it beneficial for ourselves rather than having government making everything beneficial for the citizens. Let's play our parts and become data aware as much as possible. We have another question on the same lines. With all of this emerging threats, we want to understand how often are the security infrastructure and protocols are reviewed. As in, is this like some sort of a calendarized process? It doesn't happen with all the elections coming into the picture, or is it like an annual thing, or maybe once the entire some sort of risk is envisioned, do the government review these particular protocols, or how does it take place?
so. Again, I'll start and let Nikunj finish. So there is a lot of review that happens in the government sector. There are annual audits that happen in various departments and ministries, which are mandated by the guidelines of those particular missions, etc., which are being carried out. So there are reports of vulnerability assessment, etc., which are being done by certain impaneled vendors. So I think the government is taking those steps to ensure that the review is happening. If Nikunj, you can also take in directions around the new certain guidelines that have come out.
From a certain perspective, yes, there are certain advisories which have been issued, and it's about periodic audits which are required to be undertaken. And of course, and when I talk of periodic audit, it's something to do with the technical audit. It's to do with the functional assessment. It's about following the GIGW compliance. So it's about the audit of the various source codes, followed by certain VAPT, which are required to be undertaken on a regular basis. The frequency previously was used to be a year. Now this audit has to be done every 6 months. So there are certain audits which are to be done on a quarterly basis, and these advisories keep on coming, from certain on a day, I would say on a regular basis. So it's about adherence to various standards, it's about adherence to the various compliance norms, it's about an adherence to the advisories being issued from time to time. So it's about keeping all the government entities secured from an infrastructure perspective, secured from a functional perspective, secured from a technical perspective, and of course protecting from all the emerging threats. So it's about following the advisories and looking at the various, I would, and specifically taking into account the various guidelines being issued by certain and NCIIPC from time to time.
I believe there was a specific need or a deliberate need of having these particular audits, as you mentioned, and have these particular protocols reviewed on a regular basis, because waiting for an entire mishap to happen and then have this might just maybe breach some sort of a level of data protection that we expect from the public sector. So if there's a regular audit of it, if there's a regular review of it, definitely us as a citizen, again, we feel very safe and secured. And one other question that we have, and with the entire audit being into the picture, with the entire review of these particular acts and laws coming into the picture, one particular word that's very synonymous to everything is access breach. And one of our viewers have asked a question related to access breach itself, that what security measures are in place to safeguard public sector data from unauthorized access breach. So are there any security measures in place currently to safeguard these particular data from some sort of unauthorized access breach, or are we looking forward to some sort of security measures? How is the entire landscape in this particular arena?
Yeah, again, let me start and then maybe Nikonji can finish. So there are various number of security measures from access management to firewalls to SIMSOAR, SOCs which are being mandated. SOC is called Security Operation Centers being mandated in public sector. So there is no need of worry as such. Especially we saw this during the Aadhaar data breaches, so-called claimed Aadhaar data breaches. So we saw that when it comes to the infrastructure where the data is residing, for Aadhaar it is CIDR in Bangalore, there has been no actual data breach which has happened there. What has happened is the kind of third parties and the contractors and the processors which are working with the government departments. So what is important is to make sure that we are having the very strict clauses. We are reviewing the practices of these contractors, the processors of information who are handling the personal data on behalf of the government. So that is where we are seeing that lot of these data breaches and so-called issues are arising. So what is the need of the hour is to have regular audits of these third-party vendors, whether be cybersecurity, data privacy, resilience, and such very important topics. So the guidances have been given, but the implementation of that particular guidance is what needs to be reviewed. That is my take on this particular question. Nikunj.
Karthik, well summarized. I just thought of, putting my words around the SOG and the SIM, because this is one area wherein, of course, the government has mandated every organization, be it small or medium or large, to create either a captive, SOC, and or maybe outsource or rather work as a managed security services. So it's about catering to all the threats from outside world. It's about catering to various threats which are emerging from the global perspective. It's about having a once rather having all the security measures in place, be it an IPS, an IDS, or the next generation, I would say IPS, IDS firewalls. So it's about an organization to understand from a cyber perspective how crucial the data is for each one of us. So government, and of course, from a government perspective, from a public sector perspective, those awareness are being spread, and it's about now scaling up to the next level and to ensure that all our data is protected from any unauthorized, attack or any unauthorized access. So that's about it.
Definitely well said, Nikunjan Kartike. I believe data being a crucial part of us, um, everyday activity, us as a citizen, maybe me as an individual, data always plays a very crucial part. And with us not understanding the amount of these breaches happening into the market, the amount of laws and acts that the government has already come up with, uh, this becomes very difficult for people to understand that why this particular consent management or any other topic that we might have discussed in this particular live session becomes very important, becomes a key to play in this particular evolving landscape of data protection and data awareness. And with experts like you coming into the picture, explaining us everything, breaking it down for us, I believe this becomes a very good platform for us to educate people, to make them aware, and to play our parts in this particular evolution that's happening in this transformation, rather not evolution but transformation that's happening from the public sector. And data privacy definitely becomes the talk of the town. Even today it is the talk of the town, but I believe with the entire government putting pressure and focus on this particular aspect, this would be something that we will be looking forward to as citizens, and this would be something that you as experts would be looking forward to, I'm pretty sure. So since we are moving towards the end of this particular session, and any closing statement from your end, anything that you would want our viewers to understand or maybe listen to you, or do you have a message for them, since we are approaching the data protection day as well, do you have any message for them in specific?
So let me start by giving my closing session statement is that a it is I'm speaking this from the yesterday's incident which got reported in the media, which is being also called as mother of all data breaches, which happened yesterday, where 26 billion records got leaked, right, from Dropbox, LinkedIn, Twitter. Everybody has been named in that data breach. Said that, look at what kind of data is being leaked, and that personal data which is now available on the dark net is making us feel very unsafe. And especially coming from a private sector, these people would have actually put in a lot of security measures. But look at what public sector can do. We can make all this data illegal, and in India we have made it, and that's what DPDPA is. Think about all this data which is now available on dark web cannot be used by any organization. No organization can benefit from this data which is available out there, which is in public right now. And because it is illegal to use that data, and that's what this data privacy law has done for our digital nagriks, which actually makes sure that the value of that data right now is almost zero for organizations because they can't touch that data. Now, the only people who can touch that data are doing fraud, illegal activities, and that's where cyber security, and you see very strict laws which will come out by our particular government, and the ministry is talking about that on a day-to-day basis, where deep fakes and all of that are being curbed. So, what public sector can do is what they can make these laws and regulations to ensure that usage of such data is illegal, which makes the value of this data zero unless until you are a criminal or you are trying to do a ransomware attack and using it with phishing, etc., etc. But all of that is a criminal activity. So now for them to sell this data is almost impossible. So that is where I come from, and I say, as Data Protection Day is approaching, I think public sector has played its part, government has played its part in India. With the rule making, it will be more clearer. But I think अच्छे दिन आ रहे हैं. Over to you, Nikunj.
So I can just say, आपका data, आपका अधिकार.
वेल सेट कार्तिक एंड निकुंज, आई बिलीव अच्छे दिन आएंगे और मेरा डेटा मेरा अधिकार, डेफिनेटली. And with now that I have become an advocate of public sector coming into the picture and protecting my data, I believe this was a wonderful session. It was an insightful one for me and for the audiences that we have. We have received comments that is to thank you for having this session with us. Thank you for sparing so much of time and to educate people like us on what is the importance of data protection, how we should look into our data, how we should have some sort of onus in the kind of consents that we are giving to different platforms and applications, rather than just going after government or public sector directly asking them of how my data is being used. I believe there should be some sort of onus and accountability that I as a digital nagrik should take on my part as well. And now that I am aware of it, and now that I will make people aware of it as well along with the both of you, I believe this was a wonderful session to have, and looking forward to much more sessions with the both of you and other partners from Bazaars in India as well. And I believe the audiences would have the same feedback and suggestions for the both of you as well. So anything that you would like to add into before we leave the session for the audience as well?
I think thank you, Kashish. You have been a fantastic moderator. And thanks for being such a curious digital Nagrik. And thanks for asking us all those questions. We are very happy and we would be love to have such sessions going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Kashish. Thanks a ton.
Thank you to both of you as well. See you on Data Protection Day with maybe much more questions that I will have after this particular live session. And let's have these particular live sessions more often and make these particular digital Nagriks as curious that I am.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kartikeya. Thank you, Nikunj. I would
Thank
want
you.
to bid a goodbye to our audience as well. Thank you for joining in, and stay tuned for other videos and live updates that we'll have from Bazaars in India.
Sure.